Alright, I decided to go ahead and videotape the steps on this little in the hoop prayer cloth that we're making for church. So if you're helping to make these, I can get you the design. It's one that I did in my digitizing software, so it's not one that I purchased. So anyway, we're putting a little pocket on the back so that you can add a tag or a scripture. Our tags have a little place on the back if someone wants to write a note of encouragement. So the main thing is, or the thing that I tend to forget to do, is I need to use the same color bobbin as I do the top thread. So I'm doing mine all in one color, but you can, at the color changes, you can change the middle of the flower and the little flourish to different colors if you want to do that. But that just kind of slows it down. So I decided just to do the whole thing in one color. The other point that I want to make is I've cut my fabric, generous size. I'm using all the same color on this one, but you can change the color on the backing if you want to, whatever you want to do, and the pocket can be a different fabric also. So for the top and the backing and the batting, I'm doing it about 4.5 inches square. That's pretty generous size, so if you have something that's slightly smaller, as long as it goes beyond the size of the design, is fine. I like to have a little bit to grab onto when I'm trimming, so I like the generous size. And for the pocket, I cut it 4.5 by 6 inches. So I'm going to fold the long side down. I don't know how to explain that, but this ends up about 3 inches. And then I take it to my sewing machine and I do a little top stitch, like on this one right here. It just neatens up the edge. So you can press that and just sew a bunch of these pockets if you're planning on making several. And have that ready for when you get ready to embroider. Alright, I've got my water-soluble stabilizer doubled because this particular brand tears a little bit easier. So if you have a heavy-duty water-soluble, you don't have to double it. So I like to offset. This is a 12-inch piece of stabilizer, and I like to offset it in my hoop because if I trim it off, there's not going to be enough left to do another hooping for this size hoop. And so I like to leave it in the hoop so that I'll have enough left over. When I take this off of the machine when it's finished, I'm only going to lose a little bit in the middle. So I'll have enough left over for one more hooping, and that just kind of conserves on material. I am trying to find a bulk supply that I can buy a little bit cheaper. I don't like to store my water soluble very long because in Louisiana it goes bad if you don't keep it dry. Okay, so I'm ready to put this in my embroidery machine. I'm going to take one of the squares, the 4.5-inch squares, and this is going to be the pretty side. And you can use freezer tape to tape it down. I'm going to use this water-soluble double-sided tape. It holds it long enough to keep it from shifting, because I've found that if I don't spray this down, it's going to shift, and I don't like to use the spray. So I'm going to put some of this tape down just to hold the edges, just a little piece on each side, and that's not going to get in the way of my stitching. Okay, for the first few color changes, I'm going to leave this top fabric in and let the machine do a single outline to give you your trimming line for the heart. I'm going to go ahead and let it stitch the flower. It's going to do the center, the petals, the first step is these little star things sticking out. Then it's going to do the petals and then that middle satin stitch. And then it's going to do these little flourishes. So when it finishes with the flourishes, you can remove the hoop from the machine, but don't take your design out of the hoop. sometimes I forget and I take it out, and then the machine will never be able to line up again. So I've got this taped down, and I'm going to go ahead and do those first few steps through the flourish. Okay, try not to disturb what's in the hoop. You want to be really careful not to pull this too hard, but I just trim really close to the stitching, as close as you can get, and trim away all of this outside fabric. Alright, I'm going to turn this over, trim up a lot of these little jump threads. They're not really going to show because the batting is going to cover all that up, but this is kind of messy, so I just trim it up. And then I get my can down and I blow that off of there so I don't have to use tweezers to pick all these little threads up. So this part's not that important. It's just, I'm going to rush through this. Okay, so I've got a couple of pieces of double-sided tape just to keep the batting from moving when I'm trying to slide this back onto my machine, because sometimes, especially when you're pushing it through, it's thick and the batting will shift and start kind of bunching up. So make sure you cover your design and don't push too hard on this because you don't want to disturb it in the hoop. I keep saying that over and over again. And I'm going to carefully put this back into my machine and stitch the next step. Now I'm just going to trim the batting just like I did the last step, and again be very careful not to shift everything in the hoop, and then I'll be right back after I finish trimming that off. Just want to point out, if you're using this double-sided tape, make sure it comes away and doesn't stay on here, because we don't want any of that left behind. So mine pretty well sticks to the batting, and so it's coming up as I trim. Alright, the next step, I've got some double-sided tape on my next square, the backing square. Just going to center that over the heart. I have tried doing this and going ahead and putting the pocket on at the same time, but you really can't see where it's lined up on the heart, and plus the trimming is a whole lot easier if you only have one layer to trim. So I'm going to put this in my machine and do the next stitching. Alright, I'm going to trim this one, and then we'll get ready to do the pocket. Alright, this is the good part about not having that backing and the pocket at the same time. I can just eyeball this, and if my fabric has a design on it, I can place it right where I want it. If you want a deep pocket, you can go up a little taller or shorter, whatever you want. So I'm going to put mine about right there, and I've got my double-sided tape on the sides, and I just want to make sure that these edges don't poke up. And you know what, I may go ahead and put a piece of double-sided tape on the top also. Let me do that. Got a piece of tape on the top side. Like I said, this is optional with the tape. You can use freezer tape just to tape down the corners, but I find that this is getting thick, and when I start sliding it into my machine from underneath, because this is going to be on the bottom like that, so when I slide it into my machine, sometimes I'm afraid that it's catching and rolling up. So I'm going to put this back in my machine and do the next outline stitch to hold that pocket in place. I'm going to go ahead and get the satin stitch border stitched around this edge. Okay, the design is finished. The total embroidery time is only 7 minutes on my machine. I think mine does 850 stitches per minute, so it depends on the speed of your machine. But the design doesn't take long to embroider. It's just the steps of cutting your fabric and trimming and all that kind of stuff. but I think in less than 30 minutes. I've done this in 15 before. So I've cut out a whole bunch of them just so that I can make a few. So while I was adding at the cutting table, I went ahead and cut out several squares to go ahead and do this. So I get a little cup of water and a paintbrush, and while the thing is still in the hoop, I don't want to dunk this whole thing in a sink of water, because I don't want this part to get wet, because this cotton is not pre-washed, and so I think that it would start puckering. I've had that happen to me before, so there's no need to dunk this whole thing, because if you let this little bit of water soak through, it's going to start separating from the edges there. I've got a double layer here, so I may need to let this, see, this one's already separating cleanly on that side. So just put as much water as you need to get that to go ahead and separate. Okay, I'm just kind of using my paintbrush as a knife here. And sometimes there's little threads where the joins were, so you get the idea. Just get that off of there, and I am gonna save this stabilizer, because I think I can get one more hooping out of the leftover. So what I do with the edges now, I just go along with the paintbrush and make sure that all the little bits of glue are off of there. You can smash it down with your finger if you want to, and the edges will be stiff, but this is probably a good idea, since this is something we want to have some structure to it. So it's not like we need it to be soft. It'd be more like a badge. So that's all there is to it, and they're really fun to make, and I think that they're going to be very inspirational for the person who gets one of these.